All right, we got my guy Nick. If you would introduce yourself to the camera.
I'm Nick Callaio. How should I introduce myself? I'm Nick Callaio. I'm a marketer. I have worked in the music space, the weed space, the finance space, and currently looking for a new gig as of now. So,
Dope.
Kind of just being like a free agent of sorts.
Hell yeah. So what I try to do with the Creative Questions podcast is start at the beginning with creative people and just explore their journey. So where are you from originally?
I was born here actually.
Okay.
I was born in Colorado, outside Colorado Springs in Green Mountain Falls. And then I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I went to high school there. Pretty terrible place. I don't know if you know anything about Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. A lot of opiates over there. Mm-hmm. Really didn't fit in there at all in terms of like who I was, and I feel like my parents were like kind of putting me into a place not to be like, sorry guys, not to be like an East Coast person.
Sure.
And then when I got out here, I feel like I felt like I
naturally
fit in more. And
naturally
integrated.
integrated.
It's like, that's where, that's where they kind of.
When was it? Was it elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whatever? When did you start gravitating towards more creative spaces in terms of, your identity and just how you moved?
It's when I got here, honestly. Like, I didn't know I didn't know what I wanted to be, and I was really unmotivated when I was in Pennsylvania, at least in high school. I don't know how anything else was in high school, but I was pretty not motivated. I hated it, and I just didn't. Pretty much, I was just like confused, teenager.
Yeah.
But I got here, and then I met a friend, Britt, and we were in physics class. This is funny. I get to tell the story. I was in physics class, and I'm really good at physics, or was, whatever. And he got my attention, and he's like, "Hey, man, I need all your physics homework because I work at the Westward, and I just never got any of this homework done, and I need all this homework to graduate and get my associates." And I'm like, cool. So I gave him all my homework, and he ended up passing the class. And then we started hanging out, and he was just like, hey, I work for the Westward. And then he's like, I go to a bunch of shows. I took a liking to that. I started being his plus one at all these shows. Mm-hmm. Somehow got...
What genre of music?
Oh, it's just like, we'd go to anything he was covering, but basically what he was covering at the Westward was like Pretty Lights, Skrillex, dubstep, like the beginning roots of where
all this is now.
Yeah, exactly. Covering Electronic Tuesdays for Nicole, stuff like that. And then
so you were kind of front and center as a plus one to not the birth, but like one of the big waves that happened in the EDM community.
Oh yeah, and I didn't know anything about it. I was a kid. I was like 21 years old. So I just kind of shut my mouth and I watched him talk to people and kind of saw how he did everything. And then he kind of pushed me not pushed me, but I think I'm trying to remember. I think how it birthed, it was like, there was an internship coming up and he recommended me. And I can't remember the process, but I ended up getting that internship. But I was effectively doing writing.
For the Westward.
For the Westward.
Dope.
And then I bought a camera. And then I taught myself how to use a camera because Britt was like, yo man, just a little tip. If you're the cameraman and the writer, you don't need to bring someone to the show and coordinate another body. I was like, perfect. So I learned how to take pictures. And then I was covering shows. And figured out I wasn't too good at covering the shows because I was a little too biased. Really good at taking pictures.
You had strong opinions.
Yeah, that they didn't like. Or it was like too strong of an opinion and I didn't want to put it in there, but they're like, that's what we want. But I'm like,
Sure.
You know, I don't know. I felt like it was too strong. So I ended up doing my own thing because I figured I was like, the shit that they were sending me to, I was like, this sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I want to do something that I like.
Yeah.
You know? So that's where the old Denver disco came from.
Yeah. Okay. So you're attending shows. You're ingratiated to the culture. You're getting to know all the tastemakers as well as like what music is speaking to the kids.
Yeah.
And you decided, you know what, I could probably throw a party better than a lot of these other people. And you came up. What was the name of what you were doing?
Denver disco.
Denver disco. Where did that come from?
Just the name in general?
Yeah, just the name in general.
The idea, I was working at co-clubs, because this was the time when I was like straight kid, riding my road bike, with shorts on, probably not wearing any underwear or socks, just wearing Vans slides and like straight scumbag in it, trying to hustle, and I was like just putting up flyers on Colfax, and I was giving out handbills and stuff like that. And then my friend had this idea, in his head, he was like, "Yo, since you work for the clubs already, I'm gonna pitch you this idea, and then hopefully maybe they'll take it." You know what I mean? And then they grabbed it, and then, but at that point, I mean, I was embedded in so many different groups of the music scene that it just kind of naturally took off.
Well, I feel like the name disco back then, it kind of preceded disco balls popping the way they are.
Yeah.
Like, you guys were ahead of the curve in like bringing back this disco flair, right? This is what year would it be?
2000. I think my first show was 2012. The end of 2012 at the Funky Buddha.
Exactly. So like in 2012, there weren't, you know, pug statues that were made up of disco balls, right? Like the disco ball and that sort of easygoing vibe wasn't really the culture, right? So you guys were kind of taking what was happening in the scene, whether it be the sort of jam band, EDM, or some of the dubsteps or harder electronic stuff, and you guys were like, well, hold up, we're gonna do something a little more fun, a little more like smooth and easy listening. Why?
Yeah, so I think you're like right there with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we knew that there was a space for older people from the jam band scene that wanted to be in a club, but not be with another group that clashed with them. It wasn't clashing, but like they wanted to be in a nicer space, more comfortable, and maybe people that are more their age, right? 21 and up.
But sonically it was different too. Like what you guys were doing, you know, what Denver disco to me
for sure
was like complete departure from what Pretty Lights was, or you know, whatever Skrillex style drum and bass.
Everything was like so intense bassy wise. Now I know what you're saying, right? So it's like everything was like so, like the hip thing back then was like that really gouging sound in your ear,
face,
dubstep, and like, you know, everyone's banging their heads and everything. But I feel like the best thing that like somebody described at the Westward is that everyone danced the whole time. And that's like the best barometer for a party like that.
Of a vibe, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like part of it was the music, but it was like a really good like hangout and lounge space, you know. But also there was other things going on at that time that wasn't like that, you know, like more of the, you know, right, the underground. And then that's why I feel like it really didn't pop off, because it was like trying to find a space, but like I feel like I don't know.
Truthfully, in my opinion, you guys did some dope parties and it had momentum. I think it was just too early. I've been early on so many things, and then I'll double back and recognize like, oh, okay, I was a year too early. And you know, when I look at the landscape in 2016, 17, 18, like it swung to this easier listening, kind of vibed out disco thing. And so you guys were doing it the right way. It's just you guys were a couple of years early.
Dude, nobody will ever be able to do what we did. I can't even do what we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing. It's like, that's why people ask, oh man, where's Denver Disco? You should throw another party again. And people, it's not like everyone's asking me, please, I'm not like that anymore. But like, when people do bring it up, I'm like, I always tell them, like, man, I don't even know how to do what I did
back then, because you were in the moment.
Yeah, it was like, people don't get that. It's like, you cannot replicate what you don't know what you did.
Sure.
I was so young. I was like, I didn't even realize. I wasn't even paying attention to anything. I was like, I feel like I was doing so much. I was going to school. I was finishing college. I was putting up flyers. I was running a website. I was booking shows. And I was actually having fun too. You know what I mean?
You were just showing up, doing the work.
And I was like going to a lot of shows, which was the fun part. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a lot of people. And that's what it's like, going back to, you know, what we were talking about before, like doing what you know. Mm-hmm. And I feel like people get into a lot of spaces where they don't know it. And it kind of bothers me, and especially with like the music scene, you know what I mean? Like, if you're not out there liking music,
I feel like you cannot know something, but you have to have an openness to you that will allow you to grow with it. None of us knew anything until an interest sparked in us to pursue that, and then we became informed on whatever that thing was, you know? So you're gonna not know, but you have to be open to what you learn.
You know, that's where the passion comes out. It's like, I love music, and like, I put my love back into it.
Sure.
Because it's like, I'm paying my dues, you know, and it's like, I don't know, that was a big part of it, having fun. Getting out there, having those moments, which are the worst, when you're young, and like being out there between 2 and 4 in the morning, having those best moments with people and everything like that, and like possibly making new connections, had those weird times, and like I think that's like what kicked off. That's like what had like the dopamine rushing through my head, you know? It's
sure.
Like, and I'm going to like this person's house. And like, oh man, like they're having people over. It's like, oh, I'm like part of this like cool group now. You know,
sure.
It's kind of stupid to me now, but whatever.
Nah, it's tight.
It's just
you're
like
you're living in the moment. You're absorbing everything around you. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So you're throwing parties. You guys create Denver Disco. It's a vibe. People are enjoying it. And then you kind of transition out of that space of working in media and throwing parties, and you do what?
Well, I kind of had how that transition happened, and I was finishing business school, and I knew that I was decent at running a business, right? So that's why I went to business school, and I figured that music and cannabis went together. So I was working in cannabis marketing for a while, and I was finishing college, and then I ended up getting a marketing director position after my
timeline. Where does you working in marketing cannabis to when legalization happened in Colorado?
Timeline. I was working. I was working at dispensaries in 2014. So that was the year it got legalized. Mm-hmm. So I was working in the first year.
So you were already in the space before it was legal, when it was still medical.
Yeah, I was working down on East Colfax.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the old PTs.
Yeah. And so you're in there. You're doing marketing for cannabis companies. You're physically at the locations. What does that grow into?
That grew into me just being into, like, it grew into social media marketing, and then eventually events, and then it's just becoming like a full-fledged marketing director, traditional marketing director, marketing manager.
Mm-hmm. As cannabis companies expanded and grew.
Yeah, and then, you know, in my mind, I worked for the biggest one because that's like the most opportunity that you're going to have. So I worked at TGS as a bud tender. I knew my friend was the marketing manager there. She was trying to get me in, and then all of a sudden I got in, and then she got fired, and then it was like an internship, and then I got a paid position right after that. So And then ever since then, I've been working in the cannabis space ever since,
The whole time.
Yeah, but the event stuff I've always knew, because like you gotta use like big businesses like that for your own means. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I ended up throwing a music festival at the clubs, and that was like,
You cross-pollinated one of your passions, which is party promoting and throwing events, along with being a marketing director, right?
yeah, and that's where it starts getting grueling, right? You're like representing one part of your agenda, and then that was like my personal agenda, and then the second one was I was effectively running the sponsorship side of the Green Solution to make sure that that brand was getting promoted to all the ticket buyers, and then I was a festival organizer as well.
Yeah.
So
All the hats.
yeah, and it's like grueling at that point.
Sure.
You know?
But you're doing something that it's kind of a one-of-one thing, right? Like you're working in an newly emerging cannabis space, being allowed to steer the way that they market and the means that they use for their marketing, and then you're also able to kind of grow and expand your promotion curiosities, right, by throwing this festival that you did, or pretty dope.
Yeah, we wanted to throw, like, the whole point behind that is that, everyone, I don't know where the cannabis music events are these days, but back then you have Civic Center and then maybe some satellite parties, right? We wanted to throw a party that wasn't a cannabis music festival, like centered around cannabis. It was a music festival that all like music influencers would like, plus legal cannabis smoking.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's not overwhelmingly cannabis culture, but it's just what we always do, right? It's like, people do drugs and go to shows.
Well, it seemed like at that time to go to like a weed festival, right? It wasn't as open or as accepted in the culture, the mass culture. And so the 420 festival is like, it's going to be very, very smoky. It's not going to be your average citizen isn't going to want to go. So it sounds like you guys were trying to create an event that would attract everybody, which is a smart thing to do at that time, because that culture wasn't fully accepted or transitioned. So it makes sense to want to throw events that are going to attract people that are cannabis curious, that are interested in the excitement that's happening, but don't necessarily want to be fucking smoked out in a room.
Right. And I love this transition, and you're really good at this. So, the whole thing is that, like, it was overwhelming, right? It's like all the weed tourism, and then I always call it like people with weed socks.
Yeah.
It's like the weed shirts, the weed socks, and that was yeah, it's like you're clearly going to dispensaries and buying the clothes there. But the whole point is that we wanted to showcase where the cannabis industry was. And we wanted to show everybody that, like, it was us that did this. It wasn't the cannabis culture. It wasn't High Times. Man, this is like bringing me back. It wasn't High Times. They didn't do anything for us. The cannabis culture didn't do anything. Yeah. It was like all these like really real owners behind the scenes fighting to push their legislation. Yeah, legislation in government with lobbyists, and then that shockwave kind of like pushed it in the rest of the United States, which is crazy. But that was, I feel like
it's crazy to think that you were a part of that, right? Like we often don't acknowledge our accomplishments, right? But by having the intuition and the wherewithal to want to bring in people, to want to throw events for people that wouldn't necessarily go to a High Times event, that's groundbreaking at that time, because you're coming up with strategies that's going to grab your average mom or your newly enrolled college student or whatever to come and check out this event, right? At a time when people weren't doing that.
Yeah.
That's a whole creative venture in itself.
Yeah, and yeah, it's I don't know, it is hard to think about that because I don't like to, it's like I'm just me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to look at, there's self, me, and I.
Yeah.
In terms of philosophy.
Well, there's
it's
all
like,
the head trippy stuff, sure.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's hard to, it's the way you put it, it's like.
It's cool to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And you sitting here and the you controlling the robot, you guys were both there, and that gel, that synchronicity within yourself was a cool thing to have happened at a time when the music space was changing, the weed culture was changing, everything was sort of becoming more accessible but also accepted, and you were kind of like you're just an everyman that understood all that, and you balled it up and you brought it to some of the different people that had the funding and the financial wherewithal to push these ideas forward, and it grew into a more diverse weed culture, and like you have a hand in that, and that's cool.
Yeah, and that's where I want to be, honestly. I've been working in like the finance and the banking and the boring stuff for like 3 years now, but like that's where I want to be. I want to be back in it. I want to be back in the shit, and I want to be back in like hearing what's going on at the forefront, so we can bring more events to owners and to the, obviously the consumers. Like, weed is like shot right now. The cannabis industry is so shot. It's so depressed right now, and it's like, it makes me so sad. And
all that work, yeah.
And I saw it from the banking side, and I see it from
let's not get so far ahead. So,
yeah.
So you work for one of the largest dispensaries. That transitioned to you doing marketing for one of the largest weed producers, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the first ever vertically integrated.
Yeah. What was that company?
The Green Solution.
The Green Solution.
Yeah.
And what did you do for them exactly?
I was doing social media at first. So this was like the 2013, 14. I think 14. I can't remember. Long time ago, anyway. So we started, and that's when like social media was pretty much just Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then some review sites.
Really, just Facebook at the time. That was really what was popular.
Facebook, Instagram, yeah. I remember I was using Instagram on a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how old I am, I feel like. But yeah, I did that, and then it kind of just started rolling over into like my beginnings as like a marketing associate. And learning everything there is to know about the boring side of marketing, right? There's like, I already had the really fun side, the really dope part, you know what I mean? Like, I have the personality, I could go out there, I could do an event, I could run my own event, and do all that fun stuff, but now I got to the nitty gritty of like analytical decision making, watching real-time results, and testing and all that stuff, but stuff that you really need to get a job to learn to do, So yeah, that's where it kind of all came from, and I feel like I was gonna try to take it somewhere else in terms of like in a different industry, but cannabis industry just kept me there, and there's that space where I kind of like took a lot of time to myself. In 2018, 19, part of 18 and 19 did a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
I went to.
So you left the Green Solution.
Oh yeah, well I left the Green Solution after the festival, and then I went to Green Dragon, and I think I was just really burnt out by then.
Sure.
So I took I went to Green Dragon, and then I was marketing director there, I was assistant marketing director there. And then I think I was just like a little too burnt out, and I couldn't just like, you probably felt, you definitely know what this is like. It's like when you do something again for like the same kind of people, you know, and you're like, oh, this might be a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like, man, that job really was like really fun at times, but it was really hard with like, you know, just who was running it and all that stuff. And you get somewhere else and you're like, this is like greener pastures, and it's totally the same.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, it becomes really lackluster. So I was just burnt out. And then I just took a lot of time to myself, and I started traveling a lot. That's where I kind of like opened up to my mind to like who I was or am currently, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, like seeing different parts of the world is just so inspiring.
Yeah.
And I was just so focused on like, I am who I am. My identity is what I do. You know, like I had that LA mindset where I was just like talking about what I do all the time.
Yeah.
And this kind of helped me out of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you leave, you go on these trips, and you start this transition away from working as like a direct marketer or whatever, and you start moving towards finances and weed finances as well.
Yeah, so that kind of found me, of course, but you know, I mean, I think that when you work in something like the weed industry and music, you learn how to pretty much do effectively not almost anything, right? I can't be a rocket scientist, but I could jump into another industry and try to figure it out.
You know how to maneuver.
Relatively fast, right? Flexible, you know. So, you know, fast forward past COVID, not past COVID, but during, you know, 2022, I was taking interviews, and Safe Harbor Financial found me. And I don't even remember the first interview, honestly, because I think I was just taking so many. And then I talked to the CEO, and she pretty much already made up her mind, I feel like. And then I was picking between working at High Five Plumbing, or, you know that place? It's like a big, handle. But, or Safe Harbor Financial. So I took Safe Harbor Financial, and weed banking or cannabis banking was already around then, so they started it in 2000. I'm trying to think, 15? No, 2014. They figured it out, and then they were testing companies, and then they, you know, I was actually working at the Green Solution when they were testing big accounts like the Green Solution. So that's where they figured out, and then, you know, they got to point A was let's get the streets, let's get the money off the streets.
Yeah.
Because people are running around with like duffel bags.
Yeah.
Full of cash, and maybe they're kids, right?
It's dangerous at the time.
Yeah, and they were like rolling up to like, I don't know, ATMs at night so they can fly under the radar and put like thousands of dollars in deposits, right? So that was point A, let's get the cash off the streets. And then through that very, very like hard process, which I was not a part of, they figured out how to, they were talking with FinCEN and all the regulators of the banking world, and they figured out how to create a cannabis program based on compliance, which was really reverse engineering another part of the banking compliance system. So you give like cannabis, and I do want to talk about this because I feel like people don't know what it's like for cannabis operators right now. The cannabis operators, to get a cannabis bank account, they have to pretty much do a whole other job of opening an account for 3 or 4 weeks while running their business. You know, like you can't just roll up to a bank and be like, you know, oh, I need a business account. You know, it's like, like 2 or 3 days, right? This is like, you're like, oh, I need a bank account, and then you need to find a bank that does it. You need to find a bank that does it for a decent price because people were charging an arm and a leg, right? Like they're doing points on deposits plus
they're taxing them.
Yeah, points on deposit plus a monthly banking fee. I've heard people charging $10,000 a month.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
and no wonder the weed industry is struggling the way that it has been, partially because all of the entities, from the banks to the government, were taxed them so hard to start. So like, just to get these businesses off the ground, they spent so much money that they should have been able to reinvest into their business to have a longer runway.
well, I feel like there's like this really weird like push and pull of like where cannabis is in the moment in terms of like resources for operators. Mm-hmm. It's like there is too many resources, but like there's too many resources. All those resources cost so much money.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, they're so taxed, and people are like, I'm coming up with this great idea that only is for cannabis, and they don't have this resource, but it's really only state specific because everybody does it differently in their own states, right?
And that's what I mean. I just mean everybody saw this big money bag and they taxed it every way that they could, therefore shortening the runway for the people that are producing the product for the customers. So then the customers suffer because they got to pay more for a product, and then the business owners that are investing time, money, energy, whatever, they're suffering because what should be this, this long extended runway from the risk and reward of starting this business at this tumultuous time had got cut so short, because it's like, you got to pay this much for this, and you got to do this, and you can't do this, and we're going to tax you here. It made the money not as long.
Well, I think a good way of putting this in a phone call I had is like, I was talking to like a political journalist from DC, mm-hmm. which I got in trouble for it. I wasn't supposed to, but I really wanted to talk to him. I really wanted to hear what he wanted to say.
Yeah.
And he pretty much was just like, why does the media say that there's no cannabis banking resources, but there's almost over 400 banks that bank cannabis? And I was like, that's a good question. So it's like, how is there so many resources, but everybody is, it's not like people aren't educated. It's like there's not enough education put out there for what the cannabis industry is going through. Like, everyone's worried about the current space right now, like the whole, like where the stock market's going to go, like businesses, our business is going to thrive, this, that, taxes, tariffs. But what about the one product that is really specific to America in terms of like a domestic product?
Yeah.
That nobody's talking about. Fully
domestic product.
Yes. And that like we can be proud of, like not like Chevy or Ford, right? It's mm-hmm. like, keep it within the borders. Let's support American businesses. But like, what about the true American business mm-hmm. that nobody's talking about, that there's no education out there? And then that can really help not only these people that have had these licenses forever, right? There's their livelihood, mm-hmm. right? Effectively. But what the taxes and how they could redistribute these taxes mm-hmm. for the greater good of America, right? And that's what always bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, can it help stimulate some parts of the economy? Maybe. Can it help with people, like maybe with student debt? Maybe.
Yeah.
Like
if they apply it in the right way, for sure.
Yeah.
So you're in the new world of cannabis financing. It's post-COVID by a year or two. World's crazy. It's booming because of the way that COVID panned out for everybody at that time.
Yeah.
What is it like in the cannabis banking system, and then how long did you do that for?
Well, I did it for 3 years, and what's it like? It's just like, shocker. It's just
every other bank.
I don't know about that.
So it's not.
No, it's just like grinding at a dispensary. Mm-hmm. Like high expectations.
Yeah.
We need this done yesterday. And We need it done fast, and we need it done perfectly the first time.
Yeah, that's just everything.
Yeah.
You just described every job I've ever had, every career I've ever dove into.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's. I feel like not everybody deals with that though.
Are you still in the cannabis banking space?
Not right now.
Are you interested in looking to be in the cannabis banking?
I don't know about cannabis banking. I feel like I am like they just brought the nerd out in me. So like anything finance. I don't know if I could work at a bank, honestly, like a real bank, like. Buy a vault and everything. You know what I mean?
I moved. Well, you know, one of the things I've learned is I had this calling to be involved with culture, right? Like I remember when I worked in the oil and gas industry, and I wasn't touring as a musician because for a long time I worked in the oil and gas, but I also toured all over the world rapping, and that was dope. There was a balance. But when I got married, had my daughter, I stopped being able to or wasn't interested in being a touring musician. And I was just an oil field person, kind of throwing parties in Denver. I didn't enjoy those 2 weeks a month where I was separate. I was making lots of money, but I just didn't like being away from the culture, the movement, the world. I felt like I couldn't breathe, which led me to work, for first a bar, then a club, then running, the 5 dopest nightclubs in the city. Cool. And that whole time, I also learned that I have this knack or interest to do shit my way, and my way worked. Like I created success. I gave the last company I worked for the most profitable years they ever had, right? Because we did shit my way, and.
Shout out.
Yeah, whatever. but more than that, it's doing things your way. Like once you lock into who you are, your essence, your identity, and like you double down on that and you bite down and you become you and you present that, the world opens up for you in a way that it hadn't before, right? And so yeah, I that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you is you've always kind of presented who you are, and you moved uniquely through the world differently than most people. Like you weren't gonna buddy up with people for whatever reason. You weren't gonna move in a way that made the most sense. And so you working at a bank, buttoned down with a tie, that doesn't make sense. And you shouldn't think about doing that because it's gonna be a conflict for you, right? Yeah. The reason I brought all that up, the way that I brought it up is in this conversation, maybe 10 minutes ago, I had this thought of like one of the things I could see you doing that would be really dope, it would be impactful, and you would be great at is kind of like weed culture education, right? Like you're right. People don't know about the regulations and the laws on the baking side, on the marketing side. They don't know that. At the same time, they don't know what it's like to work at these different levels of the cannabis industry. And someone like you that has had such a diverse career done your way that is approachable, right? If I were trying to open a dispensary, or if I were looking to throw a cannabis-friendly marijuana event, right, or a cannabis-friendly concert that would have whatever, I could sit in a room with you, knowing you or not knowing you, and the energy you put off and the way that you explain things, I would be open to that. And so for me, I don't know, weed educator.
So obviously I've been, I guess not obviously, this is in my head, but I've been watching so many podcasts and I love it. It's like a new thing that I've been obsessing over. But obviously, I've been wanting to start a podcast as like a side project for a long time, and that's something that is that I'm just really thinking about.
Yeah,
and it's like I want to put out like not just like a podcast, like interviewing like business owners and whatnot, like strategically setting up like how I want to articulate the message from the first episode to the last one, and really let people know what's going on in this space. Because I feel like it was talked about, and it even had me going for a little bit, like the, not decriminalization, but rescheduling, when they were talking about rescheduling it. And now, what's going on in the cannabis industry now, in the government, and where compliance is, it's not even talked about right now, and it's kind of really sad. And I feel like it's just something that people should know about because it's like that was something successful that America pulled off.
Yeah.
You know, and before the government reverse engineers it for us, right, and tries to tell us that they saved us. It's like I want people to be. I want to empower people with like information, education, and where like what people in the cannabis industry are doing and what have they done and what they're going to be doing to really bring this product to as like a accepted, destigmatized product that's going to make money for everybody, you know. And yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot too. I just don't know where to start.
Well, I think, you know, we can talk about that, but I think, you know, normally I like to go through all of it and then kind of see what you have cooking, right? What's next? And it sounds like you've already been working on something that you haven't brought to the world, but it exists, it's there.
Yeah, me and my friend Daniel, last time I was at his place, I was getting just, it's like, I miss talking about it, and I feel like, you know, it's like, there's so many people that like, get into the cannabis space that just are fakes to me, and like, you know, we actually know what we're doing and what we're talking about, and like, we can bring like a really cool product to people that's not like, in your face, buy this, right? You know, it's like, it's gonna help the industry as a whole, right? And like, where it really turns into, where I would be really want to interviewing tastemakers, like covering news, law, legislation, and then cannabis business owners, and then like satellite industries that might touch that industry too, right? Like music and all that stuff. So I mean, you could interview your most common, you know, housewife, or and I say that because it's like you said it before, right? It's like how you target certain customers. It's like. That was one of the hardest ones to target in that demographic, right?
By creating what you guys created.
Yeah, exactly.
To attract.
Yeah, right. It's like and also I just don't want it to go backwards, right? I feel like
the industry.
Yeah, I don't want the industry to go backwards. It's like
You're passionate about it. You personally have put blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Yeah, and it's like everybody's so caught up on one thing right now when it comes to like where America is, like how America is marching right now. But I feel like if we, you know, just like take the power into your own hands, right? It's like when I'm like reading and Googling things, I'm like, man, I'm just like everybody else. But not like everybody else, but like this is what people do. You know, this is how they're influenced, and this is how they create how they're going to project their beliefs onto everything just by Googling these things and looking at different headlines and whatnot, and how they
themselves to gradually be affected by it.
Yeah, and how like these people articulate their headlines and everything like that. It's just like, man, it's just like, it's rough to think about that. And like,
but as you step out there with creating a platform or a path of information for people, I think it could ease some of that, and it would give you a place to put some of this passion that you still have for the space.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like coming back full force, like full circle here. Media, right? I started in media, and then wrapping in media, music, and cannabis. It's like that's my world. It's always going to be my world. I feel like it's like music, weed, fucking pretty tight. You know what I mean? And then I just like the media in general because that's where I started too. It's journalism, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always gonna have a passion for that, but also that's all America is media. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of it.
Yeah. So,
shout out to my guy Nick, Creative Questions Podcast. Boom.